The history of the orchard. In about 2008, Jill O'Connell came to me and said that she had this idea about trying to establish some fruit trees somewhere in Jesmond, and that she'd been in contact with the council. So she and I approached the cemeteries department, or bereavement services as they're called, and their senior officer came out and had a walk around the cemetery here with us. And the original idea, I think, was that we might just plant fruit trees randomly around the cemetery. But when we came out and had a look, we found this neglected and overgrown space that was not part of the cemetery and that had been a council depot. And it was in pretty poor condition because there'd been a lot of old buildings on the site, and there were concrete plinths and foundations and all sorts. But in terms of its location and the enclosure, it was fairly ideal. The idea from ourselves was that we were looking to replace some of the lost orchards of the country, because over the last sort of 20 years or so, many of the traditional orchards have been grubbed up and used for other agricultural purposes, because the supermarkets don't have a great demand for English apples. They like the sort of standard products that they can buy in from France and Spain and places like that. And in fact, there are many, many different varieties of English apple, some of which have different uses or come at different times of year. And we thought it would just be very nice for people to have an experience of that and to see how easy it actually is to grow fruit trees, because they're fairly undemanding. In terms of the soil, we didn't have brilliant soil at all. It was all full of rubble and stuff. But the trees, as you can see, have all grown very well. And we thought it would be an opportunity for people to learn how to cultivate fruit trees and some fruit bushes we have as well, particularly in an area where most of the houses and flats don't have much in the way of a garden, so people don't have much space of their own that they can grow things. Jesmond's quite lucky in some ways in that it's surrounded by green areas. It's got Jesmond Dean, and it's got the town moor and the allotments along by Highbury and so on. But actually in the heart of Jesmond, I think it's a very hard surfaced area. There's lots of traffic. Most people have only got a backyard or a very tiny enclosure at the front, so people don't have much of their own space that they can cultivate. So it's really not an area with a lot of green within it. So we just felt that it's important to keep and to cultivate and to develop some areas that people can enjoy communally, and also to be part of the process of growing and planting and harvesting things. So it's an educational project in a way as well, to help people to know what they might be able to do with a fruit tree in quite a small space. Jesmond's quite a pioneering place in terms of green issues. It's the sort of place where probably a lot of green initiatives could catch on, and things like not using plastic bags and bringing your own bag to do the shopping, things like using cycling more to get around, or walking to get to places rather than using cars. Cars in Jesmond are an absolute nightmare. There's far too many of them basically, and they can't get parked, they can't get moved. The congestion's quite bad, so encouraging people to use other forms of transport is quite important. I think these things are all very important to preserve the environment that we all want to live in for the future, for our families and future generations.